You're listening to Tabletop and Beyond, a Guild 9 gaming podcast covering board games to war games and beyond.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Tabletop Gaming, your favorite location for gaming news, geek weeks, and other relevant topics. I am your host, Justin, and I am here with my colleagues, Jason and Dan.
What's going on?
Greetings.
We got a good show for you. It's kind of a deep dive of a previous show. We talked about in our episode, Gamers in a Dangerous Time, some of the options that you could do to do virtual gaming. Well, we decided to dive into the Tabletop Simulator world, and we had an amazing weekend with it. So, we're going to share what we learned about it, what you guys can do immediately to get involved in it, because it is worth every single penny. I kind of scoffed at it at first, not going to lie, but we're excited to share with you what we got. But to start out, let's do Geek Week. Who do we have first? Jason, why don't you start us?
Okay, so this week I worked a little bit on my Ogre army again. I did an Iron Guts conversion. It's interesting with these Game Workshop models when you can buy these bundles, and they're kind of pricey. But some of these boxes go out of stock online, and the Iron Guts is a unit of four ogres that have like a little bit more armor pieces, and they're holding bigger weapons and stuff. Right. So I basically took a standard ogre box and threw a bunch of armor on that I had from a different box, and glued a bunch of stuff together and did what we call kind of a conversion, where you take one model that's meant for something else and turn it into a different one. And I think it looks really good. I just kind of mixed some Iron Guts I did have in with them, and they kind of all look like they meld well, and they've got different weapons and stuff, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'm looking forward to the day when we can all get back into the same room and actually play with these guys and put them on the table.
Did you use any green stuff, or was it all just kind of glue and extra bits?
I used some glue, extra bits. I did not use any green stuff. What I did do is I took bits from other ogre boxes. I had another box. I had a box from the Beastclaw Raiders, which is a bunch of ogres that sit up on kind of big animals, and they have kind of big weapons, like big staff-based weapons, and they also have a little bit of different armor on them, like they have helmets and stuff. And so I took their helmets and their gauntlets and stuff, and I glued them onto the normal ogres to look like the normal ogres had kind of picked up scraps of armor and kind of made makeshift battle gear. And I think it looks pretty good. It goes with a good theme. Ogres are meant to just kind of be like big dudes that hunk around and kind of scavenge and eat and make stuff. So looks pretty good to me.
Sweet.
The other thing I did this week was I started watching The Devs, which is an FX show.
Yeah, so my brother's been telling me that I have to watch it.
Mm-hmm. It is a good show. It's a science. I will say it's a science fiction. I will say that it's more of a hard science fiction.
Okay.
So it's not like blasters and all that stuff. It's more like advanced technology that's been developed that exists among us today.
Now, this is made by the same guy who made Annihilation and Ex Machina, right?
Yes. And it's what's funny is one of the main characters in the show is the guy from Parks and Rec.
Ron Swanson?
Yep. Well, except he's not Ron Swanson, but right.
I think his real name is Nick Offerman.
Yeah. Anyways, he is playing a totally different character in this, and it's really cool to see him play and dramatize this character. And it's not a joking character in this show. This is very much like kind of a thriller suspense show.
Kind of more along the lines of Ex Machina. It's kind of what I got from the previews,
the
right?
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say if you like, and I'm not going to give anything away by saying this because this kind of gets revealed really early on, but if you like the paradox theory, like that kind of stuff, things that are associated with freedom of choice. So do we all really have the freedom that we think we have, or is it superficial? Like, is it all just are all of our decisions basically made by prior experiences we've had, so that we really only have one option that we'll choose based on the prior exposures and the neurological paths that have developed. Like it's all about like that, like what is choice really, surrounded by kind of a suspense.
It's kind of an interesting thought and sort of a story, given that like tech companies in our day and age have us dead to rights on who we are. You know what I mean? Like if I look at my Facebook profile, like it knows me almost better than I do sometimes.
Yeah, the premise of the story is there's a giant tech firm that basically seems to, you get the impression they're kind of just this all-powerful entity.
Yeah.
Like a Silicon Valley or like a kind of like a Washington State type thing. And
can you restate the name of the show and what network
Devs,
it's on?
DEVS. It's on FX. It streams on FX.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to start that. Cool.
That's it for me.
Yeah, nice. Dan, what you got?
Well, I've been basically focusing on getting ready to sell a house this week. So my Geek week has been pretty thin, but I'm going through some stuff, looking around, trying to figure out what needs to be given away or parted with permanently. So it's something that we all need to do with our collections on a regular basis, is take a long look and say, if I haven't done anything with this, and if I don't see myself doing anything with this game or these collectibles, isn't it time to say goodbye? So I hate to be a bit of a downer on a Geek Week, but I think I'm in purging mode.
So which ones didn't make the cut? Which ones are the Toy Story characters in Toy Story 3?
Let's say the ones I'm on the fence about is I have a lot of stuff from X-Wing First Edition. I converted everything over to Second Edition, but I have my First Edition stuff as well. And I have not converted my epic size ships into Second Edition. So if I'm going to play with those, I need to have the First Edition stuff. But I could probably convert it and say goodbye to the whole kit and caboodle. But I love it so much, it's hard to part with.
I recently grabbed a huge stack of my D&D 3.5 ebooks and just decided, you know what, I'm getting rid of them. I've had them on the shelf for a really long time, and there's some nostalgia there, but I decided, you know what, I just need to make room on the shelf for some more books that I'm actively using.
Interesting. The culling.
The culling.
Yeah, and I did a major purge this year. You guys know this, but I put 2 different collections of RPG books. One collection I had started in 1988 and filled it out all the way through to 2000. I offed that, and then I had a whole complete library from another role-playing game where I had every book in the series, and put both of those sets on eBay, and they're all gone now.
There you go. How much did it cost to ship all that stuff?
Well, I didn't really worry about the shipping. Depending on who wants what, you negotiate on shipping. So one of the collections I broke up into about 10 different pieces.
Wow.
And in different lots, I grouped the books together. And one collection was about, I'd say about 10 hardbound books that were a little thin, but they're good size RPG books, and that whole thing went in 2 shipments of the large. The large box. There's a large square box. I filled 2 of them up and sent those out.
Yeah, I bet the USPS person was like cursing the whole time. Man, what is in this thing?
Yeah, book rate. Yeah, I think actually I covered it with brown paper, sent it book rate, and because the person who was receiving it wanted it, that was was trying to save a few bucks, and I don't blame that person. So, but yeah, sometimes you just have to say, okay, well, you just have to embrace the future and say goodbye to the past sometimes, and that's okay. And
would you say that Kylo Ren was right then? Sometimes you just have to kill the past.
I'd say instead of kill it, you could sell the past on eBay.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough.
That's right. Make a profit.
Get a buck. Get a buck. Yeah. It's not worth nothing.
Exploit the past.
Because if you're looking at your shelf and going, I really don't want to part with this, that means there's somebody on eBay who's willing to pay us a slightly higher amount than you would think. But certainly selling RPG books was much less painless for me compared to selling other collectibles that I've had. You know, comics and action figures I thought would move real fast and I'd be okay on. Those were just a total dud. Yeah, I figured I had a stack of certain comics where I realized I kept them in pretty decent condition. No one wanted them. I would lose money just by handing them to someone. And I'm like, I could just hand these to my 7-year-old. And if he tears them up, that's fine. At least somebody's getting some value out of them, you know. Anyway, sorry to bring the room down. So
parting is such sweet sorrow.
You've got to. It's this time we're in. You know, this is a time of ennui and longing.
Exactly. Well, I had a pretty active geek week. My family, I had the house to myself for a little bit, and so aside from doing some yard work, last week I talked about finishing Assassin's Creed and picking up Jedi Fallen Order with Star Wars, so I did a lot of progress on that. I'm actually almost done with the game. It's not as long as I thought it was, so I'm definitely glad I got it on sale. Let's see, we had some great conference stuff going on for our church this weekend, so I take the time during that time to sit down and paint, because it's a great way for me to stay awake during it, you know, and actively listen while I'm kind of focusing on another task. And I end up getting out a lot more from listening to our conference that way while I paint, and I got a lot of good painting stuff done, so I'm very happy my little orcs are turning out very, very good.
You and me both, man. I do the same thing.
Yeah, and
would you say your orcs have been blessed?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Do you have holy orcs now?
I did prep them for some new painting techniques I plan to do. I plan to kind of strike out on doing some non-metallic metals on that, which is sort of an advanced painting technique.
You're gonna be one of those, and you're gonna look down on the rest of us. You're like,
well,
non-metallic metals? Is that like saying non-liquid waters? I don't know what non-metallic
So
metals
what it
are.
is it's like it's a painting technique where you're not using metallic paint, because there's paint out there that's got like little metallic flakes in it and it looks, you know, metallic.
Yeah, that tastes the best.
Right.
So it's a painting technique that you do out there that simulates metals and the way that light reflects off of them.
If you like to do extra stuff that looks exactly the same as the easy stuff.
See, I don't think it does, but that's okay.
It doesn't because you don't want it to.
Well, so if you look at any of the Renaissance painters or whatever, and you look like a dude in a suit, like in a coat of arms, you know, or like a suit of mail, or you know, plate of armor, you know, suit of armor. That's what I really wanted to say, was suit of armor.
In his armor garments.
Yeah, if you look at that, I mean, it's a 2D painting that he did, but it looks 3D with the way that the light's reflecting off of it and shadow is, and you get the feeling that, oh, that's a metallic suit of armor that guy is wearing. And that right there is the definition of non-metallic metals, right? Because they didn't have metallic paint back in the day. So anyway, it's an advanced painting technique. I feel like I want to push myself, because I enjoy it. So, and plus, you know, look, some people have to look down on others, so, you know, why not me?
I think it's ironic that they didn't have metallic paints, but I'll bet you dollars to donuts there was lead in that paint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It made it much more vibrant. Yeah.
Oh, it was metallic.
Non-metallic metals, paints with lead that aren't nothing you've said has made any sense at all.
Yes, and this.
Let's see what else is going on. I mentioned earlier we bought Tabletop Simulator. We're going to get to that later in the show. I've been working my way through Battlestar Galactica, and Dan and I had a conversation last week about this after the show. He says, "Push through, brother. I'm almost to season 3 at this point right now, so I'm in it to win it, Dan."
You
Remind me how many seasons there are?
4.
4, yeah.
And 4 is like a 4A and 4B, right?
Yeah.
Kind of split season. But I had never really fully seen the show. I'd only seen the miniseries to begin with, and so when I finished Supernatural the other day, I said, "All right, time to get into kind of a sci-fi show," you know. So
is it too depressing to plow through it like you're plowing through?
Ooh, it's hard. It's dense.
Yeah.
It's very dense. It's very dense. But I'll tell you what, I kind of put it on pause last week, and I streamed the entire season of Picard last week. I watched all 10 episodes.
That's good. That's great. It's good to have them back to back. I watched it every week and was salivating from one Thursday to the next. So
it played very well binging. I mean, you know what I mean, like where I kept wanting the next episode, and so that was great. Big fan of that series. It was really good. Let's see. Last thing is I've just been prepping for our Rogue Trader RPG that the three of us are going to be doing along with three other friends of ours. So looking forward to that. Been helping people with their character sheets, which has been fun. Actually, believe it or not, I actually have been enjoying helping people with their sheets because I'm also learning this game as well. I've never played it, but I'm going to be DMing it. So
well, you're probably learning a little deeper the lore that surrounds the 40K.
Yeah,
system, or not system, but just verse, the 40K verse.
Yep.
That's pretty baller of you to never have played a game and say, "Hey, we're going to play it for the first time. I'm going to DM." I mean, that's what a lot of us did back in the day, you know, in the 80s and 90s. We'd just buy a game and sit down with you and your friend would each make a character and you would fight to figure out how the combat system worked, right?
Yeah.
But I doffed my hat to you, sir, for for doing both things simultaneously. It's usually easier to play a game at a con and go, I think I want to buy that one, and I think I want to run it for my crew. So good on you.
Well, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say that it's also at this stage where we have played so many systems and so many games that you can see kind of the tropes that are associated in the mechanics of these things, that it makes it easier to do that, to grab a new system and to be able to kind of say, okay, I understand what they're doing. There's a couple things I have to reread because I don't understand what do they mean when they say ability here, what do they mean when they say trait, that kind of stuff. But once you get those tropes down, I think with the experience that the three of us at least have on our belt, we can grab a system and kind of DM it off the cuff.
And every time I see the word grapple, I just skip to the next page.
Oh no grappling!
I'm not gonna worry about it.
Nope.
This is somebody else's problem. Whatever the grapple mechanic is, we will figure it out. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I was literally just looking at grappling today. Believe it or not.
Not the best use of your time.
I will never grapple.
Yes, you probably should give yourself a pedicure before you memorize grappling rules.
No, it's pretty good, and I'll tell you what attracted me to the system. It was a great sale on Humble Bundle. I got like the entire Rogue Trader library, so it included all the expansions and a bunch of missions and a bunch of stuff for $15.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And so it's all PDF stuff, but hey, like it's great. And the thing that attracted me to that got me to buy it in the first place was initially that 40K lore. Cause I got into painting Games Workshop stuff, and so videos started popping up about 40K lore. I started listening to some of the, stories from the Horus Heresy and the Imperium of Man and all that stuff. And I'm going to be honest with you, I actually think that 40K has one of the best lores out there I have ever heard.
It's pretty good.
It is really good. It is really good. And they have one of the best fail safes I have ever seen in a system, which is because they're so far in the future, like the 41st millennium, right? And there's been so much like propaganda around the Emperor, and there's been more history lost than history like remembered, at that point. Mm-hmm. So like if they end up contradicting each other, so like if a new book comes out and it contradicts a past one, the go-to response is like, well, yeah, I mean, sure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we recognize it contradicts each other because either A, somebody got the history wrong, somebody didn't know the history, we didn't know it completely, or it was propaganda. So,
I love that last. Or it was propaganda.
Yeah, so
You're right.
dude, it's crazy because it's just like the failsafe is amazing because they can totally, maybe not totally contradict themselves, but like bits of lore and history can be contradictory, and they're like, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever, and they don't have to go back and like retcon a whole bunch of stuff because of the way they've set up this history. You know, the world that you live in. It's kind of a grim, dark, the state controls everything history, you know?
So I have a one of the problems is, as a Dune fan and somebody who's read so much Dune, the more I get into 40K, I start seeing the parallels.
Right.
And I'm not going to say that they've ripped Frank Herbert off or anybody, because who cares, right? But at the same time, what the Dune universe has is not a great RPG. It doesn't have 3 different RPGs from 3 different systems to choose from that are awesome. Sorry, I know they're out there, but come on, does anybody play them? You know, doesn't have the great board games, the great tabletop games, all the great minis.
Yeah.
So 40K as a gamer gives me everything I want as a gamer. But as a sci-fi guy, I keep going back to that Dune universe, just because that's how I came to that type of sci-fi. That was my on-ramp into it. So I have, you know, it's like certain people that always look at D&D through a Lord of the Rings eyes.
Right,
Every
right,
time I look at 40K, I have to like literally scrape Dune off my synapses and say, no, this is not Dune, this is 40K. Stop, you know, laying your baggage on these guys.
Well, and I think what you'll find as we get deeper and deeper into this system and you get a little deeper into the lore, you'll start to really see where it diverges from the Dune aspect. I think it's an important point, though, is some people say, well, you know, and not saying you said this, but just the general idea, you know, well, they ripped off this and they ripped off that. But you know what? That's part of humanity, is we're building upon all of the things that have been established.
All musicians have influences.
Yep.
And that's how I look at it. It's like, so
all artists have influences.
So
right?
all artists. So if I decide to like form a rock band, does that mean I'm not allowed to play Rolling Stone stuff or Beatles stuff? It's like influences. So I love the fact that the 40K lore is so deep, because I think gaming and RPGs should have lore bases that aren't completely dependent on Hollywood.
Yeah.
For good or for ill, there's a lot of, you know, I think it's a great thing. I don't know enough about it. I have poked around enough to have a working knowledge of it, and I do have respect for it. So I hope none of our listeners who are 40K fans think I'm throwing shade at 40K, because if there's one thing I refuse to be, is an internet hater. This is my perspective of coming into it. But having another sci-fi universe that's set like 40,000 years into the future is pretty cool. It's good to have more than one to choose from.
Yeah, and I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that 40K took a lot of, you know, influence from Dune. I mean, Dune came out, the 50s, and 40K, I think Games Workshop was established in the 70s, if I'm not wrong. You know?
And they're not a one-for-one at all. I mean, but there's a couple of core ideas, like the God Emperor, the time frame, the gothic nature of it. There's some themes there, but that's like saying, hey, you know, Star Wars is a ripoff of Buck Rogers, you jerks. It's like, well, yeah, Buck Rogers is one thing. It was. Star Wars was a ripoff of Buck Rogers and of Flash Gordon, but nobody's all offended. Right. You know,
Flash Gordon,
Fender
of the universe.
Not the movie, right. But you know what I'm saying. So
yeah.
I'm playing Rogue Trader. This is the first 40K universe game I've played in a long time, so I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be good. Maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about your guys' characters that you developed for it. Because Dan, I love yours, where he wears way too much makeup.
That's right.
Oh, that's the captain?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
thinking like Jack Sparrow-ish is what I had in my mind. You know?
Jack Sparrow
needs to despise the captain just a little.
Yeah. Well, what was the sun dust? Or I don't know. There's some. Never mind. I'll think of it next time. But yeah, this will be fun.
We'll edit you stammering out.
Right. No. Everybody needs to know who I am.
That's right.
You know, to back up 1 second on the concept of influence. That would be a good thing to talk about. Actually, a good show on like some of the influences of some big gaming stuff. But gaming, movies, science fiction, fantasy stuff. We should make a note of that. One of a movie I wanted to bring up, kind of side tangent, the movie Metropolis, which was a 2001 anime. Japanese anime.
The anime, not the original silent film.
Yep, exactly. And that's the point I wanted to make there, is that it was an anime that was influenced and loosely based off of two things. Off of a silent film. This was like the 1920s or something.
That thing terrifies me. I own it on DVD. I haven't got to the end.
Oh, do you? Wow.
Silent films scare me. I don't know why. I just have to turn them off. They freak me out. Sorry, we won't talk about me.
No, that's okay.
We won't unpack my psychosis this year.
And we're not editing this out. We need to know who you are.
We need to know who you are.
You all need to know what I'm afraid of. It's silent movies.
Anyways, right. So based off of the silent film, and I think also some of their manga and stuff, or manga. And what was interesting about this movie is when it came out, I really like this movie. It's basically a giant metropolis city that has multiple layers. And, as you would expect, the higher layers are the rich people in the government, the people who kind of own the government and run it. And as you get down, you get deeper and you kind of get into the trash and all that stuff. So if you've ever seen like Fifth Element, right, at the beginning of Fifth Element, how as you go deeper and deeper into the layers, you get to the older parts of the city and it's the poor people and all that stuff. Same concept, right? It's a very kind of a noir feel movie. And
wait,
people,
what kind of feel?
Noir.
A noir?
N-O-I-R.
Noir.
That's what I said, noir.
You said
Dude,
noir.
All right, listen. Are we really going to talk about this right now?
We love you, man.
Is this what this is about?
It is a little bit.
I'm muting myself.
Noir. Whatever.
Noir.
All right, nerd. Anyways.
You're an English language nerd.
The point is that people, when this movie first came out, a lot of people ragged on. They were like, "Oh, they're just copying Blade Runner." And these, Blade Runner, they're just copying Blade Runner. And it's just so frustrating sometimes to see people that can only look surface deep. Because when did Blade Runner come out?
Ooh, 1980.
Yeah. And what was it based off, right? It was based on a Philip K. Dick's short story, actually.
Oh, and tons of 1920s and 30s movies.
Yeah.
Yes.
More
right?
tons of them.
All of these things
1982.
are built. Yeah, exactly.
1982. Yes.
And that was the movie based off of the Philip K. Dick novel, which was before that. But all of these things are influencing each other and moving together, right? And so I think it's really cool when you see games and you see very similar mechanics in these games, but each game just kind of tweaks the mechanics a little bit, or takes lore and just kind of does like a new skin or changes it a little bit. I'm cool with that. I like that. I like seeing, because in my mind, unless you're doing something that's just blatantly copy paste to try to make money on it, in my mind, it's progress in our industry.
Yeah.
And I like that. And even if it's just baby steps, a little bit of progress is better than no progress.
I mean, we were looking at a game the other night where I was like, oh, this is like Zombicide meets Descent.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I mean, maybe I'll save this for the other show, but I mean, there was a game that clearly took a lot of influence off of two other very successful games, and we're trying to make it its own. And I think it is going to feel like its own game, in its own right. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Even baby steps makes a big difference.
Yep.
So there's another idea here, because we'll never get to the end of this podcast. We're going long here. But Cory Doctorow, he's an author, and he's also one of the leaders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He has this whole legal justification on how game mechanics are actually not copyrightable.
Oh, I
so,
yes.
So,
I think we've talked about this before.
Have we on this? Or
not
you and I,
this,
or not on the show? But
yeah,
there's an idea where, there's a reason why, their D20, Wizards put out the open gaming license system is because they would be so caught up in defending their copyright all day long and losing from time to time if they didn't have an on-ramp for people to go publish their own stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, FYI, if you really want to go toe to toe with one of these big game companies, from the one legal perspective from the EFF, which is no small potatoes, you may win. So don't go stealing everybody's game systems. But if you do, get a decent lawyer. It may turn out okay.
Awesome.
All right, I'll shut up now.
All right. Well, dude, that was awesome. Awesome discussion on a lot of stuff and seeds for future shows. But let's talk about some new stuff. Dan, I think you put some new stuff in there for us.
Yeah, we can blow through these pretty quick too to pick up some time here.
Make sure you pronounce them right, because if you don't, Justin's going to get on you.
Yes, I'm going to
Noir.
order you a bagel. Can I get a bagel with cream cheese? Sorry. I'm rewatching Community on Netflix, which has saved my psyche during the quarantine. I'm like, Community's on Netflix. First of all, Community had 2 D&D episodes. There's a gamer nexus there, so I'll stop talking about that. I guess that was my Geek Week. I haven't got to those episodes yet.
There you
go. The Game Manufacturers Association, GAMA, has launched a new addition to their friendly local game store locator. In addition to the store information and hours of operation, stores can list their current operating status, such as whether they're offering curbside pickup, local delivery, the availability of gift cards, and more to help support stores affected by shelter-in-place, lockdown, and quarantine orders. GAMA has also created a Google Doc with a detailed list of game companies that are offering assistance to local game stores. So that's a pretty cool thing. Local game stores have pretty thin profit margins in and of themselves, and they still have to pay the rent in order to keep those stores. We all benefit from brick and mortar small game stores, even if you're not going to one every week, or even if you don't have one nearby. The hobby benefits from them. So hopefully the current pandemic will not lead to too many Chapter 11s for local game stores.
I'm worried about it, man. I'm worried about those stores.
Jason and I've got a game store that is near where we work, and they had to move to... Well, they moved to no gaming in the store at all, obviously, right? You could go in and shop, because they have a huge collection of games and models and things that you can buy. But there's only 10 people allowed in the store at one time, and they did do curbside pickup as well. And I was running out of some paint, so I went in, grabbed a couple extra things that I probably didn't need in the moment, but I knew I would need in the future. Some extra basing materials and things like that, and it was super easy. They were super friendly, and they seemed especially grateful that I was able to come in and grab some stuff. So
are their store still open? I thought they were doing curbside now.
Well, you can go in. You can have up to 10 people in there at one time.
Oh, right,
so
right.
You can do curbside pickup, but there was only one other dude in there when I showed up, so I just went in.
Well, that's good to know, because I have one paint, and when this all really started locking down, I have this really critical wash.
Yeah.
Called Agrax Earthshade.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, all these stores started shutting down, and I went and I was doing some painting. I looked at my bottle, it was almost out, and I was like, no! It's like this critical wash. I'm like, how am I going to get Agrax Earthshade? So I'm gonna stop.
Some of us are worried about toilet paper, Jay. I don't think you can wash your butt with that wash.
And he's like, we only got 3 rolls left. I'm like, I'm almost out of Agrax Earthshade. Okay, let's talk about what's important.
These trying times. All right, so next news item. Project Aeon released a large library of books from the Lone Wolf series available for free. That's right, free. The release includes more than 40 game books, along with a trove of related articles, artwork, and more. The downloads are covered by the Project Aeon license, which allows free downloads for personal use, but no redistribution of the files. The books themselves can be read directly on the website or downloaded in HTML, EPUB, MOBI, PDB, and several other formats.
So what's the rationale behind this? Why would you all of a sudden release everything for free? Nobody's playing it?
I think it's exposure.
Yeah.
If you've got it and it exists digitally, and if they were trying to sell them and they weren't moving, you could probably increase your install base, basically. But
Yeah.
I think the one of the main owners of the Lone Wolf series is just kind of giving his stuff to the universe and saying, just take it and enjoy it. In some ways, a lot of these traditional books that have been published in hardcover, they kind of made their money on the print run of the book,
Yeah.
and they're off to other things. And a lot of it's just the love of the art and of the hobby too.
Yeah.
So,
That's kind of what I was thinking, because there's a lot of that are sort of like going out of print. You know what I mean? Like, because there's not a lot coming out for them, and the authors don't really have any plans to do any further expansions or whatever with it. They're just kind of like, our series is what it is. You can have as much fun with it, and since we're pretty much selling out, here's the free digital PDFs, and like, we weren't expecting to get anything more out of this. So have fun, everybody.
I mean, these are great opportunities if you want to reskin a system, or if you want to, if you've got some stuff that you just want to do for yourself and run with your local group and not worry about, did you break the game? You created a monster that's not compatible with the next supplement or something like that. It's like, who cares? It's just a really great springboard for homebrew.
Yeah.
If nothing else. So, hey, and giving stuff away for free is awesome. As a guy who just downloaded D&D Beyond and actually thought about buying multiple digital copies of books that I own on the shelf, I'm going to give these guys credit for putting something out for free on the internet.
Yeah.
Humble has another bundle befitting the COVID-19 fund for direct relief. This one is perfect for role players stuck at home looking for a project. The 3D printable terrain layer bundle doesn't actually require a 3D printer to enjoy. While the bundle includes project files for 3D printers, it also contains files for normal, plain old inkjet and laser printers to use cardstock and
That's
create
cool.
amazing full-color terrain. Either way you go, you'll end up with dungeon walls and floors, buildings, merchant stands, trees, statues, and more. This bundle runs until Wednesday, April 22nd. We may publish this podcast by then. So if that's interesting to you, jump on the Humble bundle.
Very cool. That's good stuff.
What's going on Discord?
Who knows?
Who's posting? Somebody's got Discord on loud. Ba-ding, ba-ding, ba-ding. Sorry, I'll stop. I'll stop complaining.
My bad. I tried to turn off notifications, I think. Okay.
I think that's my fault, because I was chatting with somebody who asked a
good job, Jason.
We need to get out of the same channels. That's the problem.
We're going to have to trim this in post.
Yeah, exactly. I need to turn it off. Let's see. So, the one news item that I have is my Facebook has been bombarded by Frosthaven Kickstarter. Now, Frosthaven is the sequel to the multiple acclaimed Gloomhaven, D&D RPG adventure in a box. And so Frosthaven is its successor. It takes place in the north of the lands of where Gloomhaven took place. And I'm literally looking at the Kickstarter and watching the dollars rack up right now. I mean, it is nonstop, just keep going. So they're in day 8 of 31 of the Kickstarter, so they have 23 days to go. Their goal was $500,000. They have already raked in $6,765,941 at this point. So
that's straight, stone cold, legit gangsta Kickstarter.
Yes. Yeah. So that is pretty awesome. They are crushing it. And, yeah. I mean, I have not played Gloomhaven. Have either of you guys played Gloomhaven yet?
Yes.
What did you think of it?
Well, it's a no dice mechanic, kind of like Descent game where you're working the map and you've got a character with different skills and different equipment and stuff like that. it has lots of different characters and lots of different boxes. And our buddy Sean, who is running the game, didn't get through the part where it says certain characters don't. You don't open up certain characters until you've played through such and such campaign. And so a lot of us were playing characters that weren't supposed to be in these different scenarios.
Oh.
And they were not necessarily a good fit. So I want to say I am not an internet hater. I know a lot of people love Gloomhaven. I think if I never had a single RPG in my life, Gloomhaven would be like crack for me. But they go to a lot of work to avoid using dice with their card mechanics, and I've seen other games pick up on that, and I don't think it's that useful of a mechanic to keep flipping cards all the time and deck building for your randomization. It seems like they just try too hard to not have dice in the box. But if you look inside the box, there's a gazillion things in the box. So that's my only knock on it. I know it's fun. Like, you get great minis, and it's a really deep game. And that's like, you could play with a bunch of people who are never going to play D&D in their life, and they would have a really amazing time. And you could get together every Wednesday, just like a D&D group, and play that thing.
Well, the draw from Gloomhaven and now Frosthaven is that you don't have to have a DM, right? Like, it's situationally based.
Yep.
You guys can play together. And just kind of go along. You're the second person that I've heard, though, that says you've got to read the rules. You have to read the rules and understand them and play it as intended. In fact, the person I heard this from was on Facebook. It was Robert Schwab, who created Shadow of the Demon Lord and a couple of D&D supplements and things like that.
And he worked on 5e.
Yeah, he did. He worked on 5e. So he played it and said he hated it. He thought it was really dumb because I guess his character died and there was nothing for him to do for like 2 hours or something like that.
That can happen.
But then what happened is they misread a rule and he shouldn't have died like that or something like that. And he says, "Okay, we're gonna give it another chance." And next day he says, "I like the game. It's a lot more fun than my experience the day before." But the lesson I took from that is, like, whoever has the game has got to pour through the rules. Yes. Like, so maybe there isn't a DM to this, per se, but there's got to be a DM to this, essentially, in the guy that you got to have somebody who knows the rules.
You should not. This is not a casual game to pop open on the table and go, "Hey, let's learn this and just figure it out as we go," unless you want to do it all Saturday.
Yeah, right. The three of us did that with Zombicide at a Catacon, and we had a great time.
Yes,
and I don't think you can do that with Gloomhaven or Frosthaven. Yeah, exactly. So,
but I the minis are gorgeous. The setting is interesting. The differences in characters is very unique as well. I think they did I'm talking about Gloomhaven, not Frosthaven, but they do have your classic tropes with with your different fighters, trolls, etc. But there's lots of different flavors, and it's deep and unique and well thought out, and it's really good, and I think people like it for a reason. It's a quality experience, but man, they need to spend more time and make better videos on their website or YouTube to explain how to play the game. Maybe they already have, and if they have, somebody can call me out and say, "Dan, you're full of crap."
Well, speaking of picking up games and learning them, let's get to kind of the main part of our show today, which is talking about Tabletop Simulator. Jason, why don't you kind of walk us through Tabletop Simulator a little bit in the beginning?
Sure. It's a game of itself, but the whole point of it is to host a virtual table that you can bring other games to. So if you think we like to sit around a table and actually go over to somebody's house and sit down, and somebody brings a box over and we open it, throw a bunch of components on the table and have a good time. Yeah. Well, why can't we do that virtually? So let's create a virtual table, and we all sit at our home computers, connect in to a server, and we can all see that table in the middle of this virtual room, and load up some components, throw them on the table, and use our little mouses as hands and kind of move components around and do whatever we want, right? So Tabletop Simulator produces that. It's simulating the tabletop. And what's cool about it is it's on Steam, and one of the cool things about Steam is the workshop capability. We'll talk about the two things, but so there's a huge community of user-generated content. So people making their own games, people converting games that are out of print, people, making their own spin on existing games. But then there are also it's about 40, right? There's about 40 DLC paid versions. So you can buy, this is a game that's sponsored by the company that made it. They have their own official components. And when there was another system, there've been several approaches to this over the years. Valence, I think, is another one. I keep getting the name wrong, but the difference here is that this uses the Unity physics engine, so there's actual physics at the table. So if I pick up a chip or a dice and I throw it, it will actually be as if I threw it at the table. It rolls.
Yeah,
hits
you can
the
roll
physics.
your dice.
Yeah, you can flick pieces when you get angry off of the table, all that stuff. You can flip the entire table.
Only
which
the
is fun
host
to do.
can do that. Only the host.
Yeah, well. Anyways.
And the button's there. Don't randomly click the flip button.
Yeah, no,
There's
no going back.
I think they do have a "Are you sure?" window if you want to do that.
Maybe.
I saw that come up.
I don't know. I clicked it and it went.
And it went.
That was the best part of the game.
So one of the other really cool things about this is that they have the ability to script. So there are a couple games we've played over the years, right, that just have a massive or enormous setup times to play these games.
Yeah.
And depending on which mission you do in the book, you got to set it up differently, and there's like 5 or 6 different decks you have to shuffle and mix things in, and next thing you know, it's taken 30 minutes just to set up this game you're going to play. Well, what's cool about Tabletop Simulator is because they enable scripting, people can build in the setup directly into the game. So when you
pretty
say
awesome.
Yeah, when you say, hey, let's sit down and let's play this game, you can click a button that says load up the starting scenario, and boom, all of a sudden, all of the card and decks are set up, all of the board pieces are in the right place, the tiles have been set up, and all of the markers and everything, and you can just start playing instantly.
It's awesome. So to get into that a little bit, first off, we saw that there was a sale on Tabletop Simulator over the weekend, and it was $10. Normally it's like $20.
Yeah.
It was
Steam.
$10 on Steam. Yeah, on Steam. It was normally like $20. It was $10, but even better, if you got a 4-pack, it was $30. So it ended up being $7.50 a person. Mm-hmm. Right? And so we paid $7.50 because there's 4 of us that wanted to get into this for access to this simulator. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's, $7 is like a movie ticket, whatever, we'll get in. I mean, cheaper than a movie ticket. But we got in, and then I also decided to get the Zombicide DLC. So this is the official component from Cool Minis or Not, officially sponsored, which I think generally means that they're a little bit more tested, and probably the scripts are a little bit better in general. But maybe not, compared to some of the... Yeah, they got a little bit of money and a little bit of effort behind it. But anyway, the thing that I wanted to talk about was you get into this room, and there's the boxes set up, there's the miniatures are set up, and all this stuff. And you go to the center mat, and you say, okay, let's play mission number 1. And you just click it, and yeah, we're doing mission number 1. Boom, tiles are set up. And then I went over to this little box thing, and I said, okay, we're also doing mission number 1 over there. Boom. All of the objectives were set up on the board, and we knew exactly what we needed to do, where we needed to go, what we needed to get immediately. I mean, it took us
the $10 right there.
Listen, setup was 30 seconds.
One-click setup.
Yeah, that's that scripting we were talking about
exactly
a minute ago. The game has multiple things they can do to script, and I'll tell you, and this, honestly, that's cool. That's really cool. Very important feature. Another feature that I have found I love is that you can copy-paste components.
Oh, yes.
I mean, so for example, when you play Zombicide, there's a rule book on the table, and I kept kind of using the mouse to move my camera over, and we were looking at the rule book and turning pages together, which may sound tedious at first. It actually isn't that tedious as it sounds. But then I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just make a copy of the rulebook? So I just clicked it, Control C, Control V. I got my own rulebook, and I just drug it over to my side of the table.
And we're able to look at it independently and check it out. And
dice, it's like, well, you need 4 of these dice. Control C, Control V, 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 V. You know, and then I got
4
all my
dice, and you're good to go.
Boom.
And that's a pretty awesome thing. And a lot of the hotkeys are pretty awesome. So like if you push M, you know, like you could be looking down at a card game, top view down, and you're like, I want to see what that card says, but I hate having to scroll all the way in just to read it, then to scroll all the way back. Well, if you hit M, it's like a magnifying glass circle that pops up that you can then read that thing. Or even better, you just hover over that card and push Alt, and it's like it brings it up to your face that you can read it, and you let go of Alt, and it's back to where it was.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to navigate the entire table while you're playing these games.
I think the user interface for what it's doing is actually pretty awesome because it's very basic controls, but it's very functionally sound.
Yeah, we played, and now we had played Zombicide before, about maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
About 2 years before. So we kind of remembered what to do. But we sat down and we were actively playing the game at a normal, fast-paced, turn. I would say within 15 minutes.
Oh yeah,
sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jay and I pulled up Outer Rim, which I have on my shelf. I'm looking at it right now, and there it was. We're like, oh my gosh, here's the game, and not that was official content, but that's in the develop. What do they call that?
The workshop user.
The workshop.
Generated,
Let me just tell you, there's some nerds that are going to nerd heaven for things that have been done in that workshop. There's some cool stuff, and I got a little weepy. All my stuff was there. I was like, oh man, if I could just glue myself to this computer and constantly play, these games.
And that's a game that if you can have it set up in 1 or 2 clicks is worth it. Right?
Sure
There's so many components.
I'm sure there's dozens of games like that in the what do they call it? The workshop.
Workshop. Yeah.
The workshop. The workshop is gonna. I was just shocked. I did a couple of search terms for things that I know I'm interested in, and there were games that I have on the shelf that I have not played, in 20 years, going, oh, well, I can play it digitally right now, and stuff that I don't have anymore.
And they're all free for the most part. Yes. Some of them ask for like some donation because they really put a lot of time and effort into it. Maybe you want to throw them over a couple of bucks, but listen, I mean, Rising Sun, the Game of Thrones board game that we found, Dark Souls board game that we found, Massive Darkness was another one that we were looking at.
Scythe has an official digital version. I mean, I like Scythe. I don't think I want to go buy it, but I could play it digitally with people who are interested.
Yeah,
and that's a great game.
Scythe. Well, and the DLCs. I mean,
Sikitha?
What's that?
Don't you mean Sikitha?
Sikitha? Sikitha. Noir, Jason. Noir.
It's Noir.
But look, the DLC ranges from $7.99 to $9.99. I mean, you could I picked up Zombicide for $10 after I spent the $7.50. So, in essence, I got Zombicide that I could play with any of my friends who have Tabletop Simulator. And that's the other thing. If one person has the game, anybody can join them. Right? You just have to have one person who owns it.
You just have to buy into Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, whereas you play on the Xbox, Jason, if you and I want to play Elite Dangerous, we both have to have a copy of the game.
We both have to own it, yeah.
So I have another gaming group of guys that I don't hang out with you guys. I have 2 other gaming groups actually because I don't like to mix groups.
Right.
Yeah, I like having some
alter egos, huh?
I need something.
Is your name Dan in those groups?
Yeah. From time, it's either that or El Elegante. Sometimes Buttercup. And my buddy was like, "Hey, we need to get together and play. How do we get together and play X-Wing? Because we haven't got together forever to play it." And 2 of us in the group had just bought into the Steam Tabletop Simulator, and then the third guy's like, "Why did you leave me out of this?" He went on to Steam. And the sale was still going on Monday, so he was able to get his for $10 too. So it's like this thing is It's gonna be big, I tell you. It's gonna be big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there's
we
like
saw.
30,000. There's
Yeah.
30,000 games of generated
Oh my
content
gosh,
right
it's
now.
so crazy.
Yeah.
And there's more coming. I've noticed that if you look at a lot of the games, like so a bunch of the Age of Sigmar, so they've got Wargaming. Obviously, Dan talked about X-Wing. I'm sure there's Armada on there somewhere, Dan.
It is. It's on there.
And we saw Age of Sigmar. There's a bunch of 40K supported stuff. There's Warcry. There's Kill Team. There's a bunch of those tabletop skirmish games. And one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of the content, people were saying, hey, I'm stuck indoors with COVID-19 right now, because we're all on quarantine. I figured I'd make this so that we could all have a good time. Who wants to play? So I think that 30,000 games probably exploded over the last, few weeks.
Oh, I know. And that's the other thing is that we pulled out the random box. Did they call them Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, or was it just generic
D&D
RPG?
minis.
Yeah.
I
It might
found
be
D
just
and
RPG.
D minis with full sets of dice. You could use this as your digital 3-dimensional gaming space. And they were animated minis too. You could pick up the
cool.
beholder and he'd be squiggling, and the dragon was all running in place. It was pretty sweet.
So they had a whole Rogue Trader scenario to jump into.
No.
Yeah, they did. It was actually kind of cool, but yeah, it was pretty sweet.
So there are some downsides. Let's talk about the downsides because it's awesome and we recommend it. But I think when Jay and I were messing around with it, it had a pretty decent audio capability. You got to hold down the letter C, I believe.
It's a push-to-talk system.
It's push to talk. And if something goes wrong, your conversation kind of ends. So, you may want to consider Discord or some other voice exchange app to have running in the background instead of using the internal push to talk. Now, that's if you already know folks and stuff like that, if you know the people who you're gaming with. What other downsides were there? Oh, I think for some games that are very complex and have a million pieces, it really helps to have somebody who knows how to play that game kind of walk everybody through it.
Especially some of the hotkeys for that game.
It would be it's a very hard place to learn a game. So I don't think it's going to hurt, 3-dimensional sales of actual real hard products. Because what I wanted to do, because we had Outer Rim out digitally, I wanted to run downstairs and grab my stuff and bring it up and look through the cards and look through the rules in real space. So I would say there are some games, maybe Zombicide was a good one, a good throwdown when people don't know how to play. But make sure if you're playing something complex that you've got somebody there who
Pull up YouTube and watch a tutorial on YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say that they have a general tutorial that you can go through when you first load it up. I highly recommend it.
I do
Because they give you just kind of some very basic maneuvers and things to do. And we just went into a room and just started, I think we were messing around with in the a poker room, right, Jason?
Yeah.
We were flicking stuff around, we're throwing stuff, we're using different hotkeys to check things out. And I mean, there's always a help and configure. There's a help menu that you can get to pretty easily that'll tell you certain hotkeys. But it just takes a little bit of experience. I do think that there's a little bit of a learning curve. One of the hardest things for me is when I draw a card to just draw one card and not bring over the whole deck.
Yeah.
You're like, dang it.
You just ruined the whole game.
Yeah,
Let's put it away.
And
Flip the table.
If you can figure out the hotkeys, it saves a lot of choosing something, right clicking it, choosing the menu, choosing something else within a sub menu, and then having it do the action that you want it to do. If you can hover over the dice and hit roll or hit R for it to roll, if you know that, then it makes it a lot easier than if you were just to do a lot of clicking.
And you find yourself stumbling around at first.
Yeah, and the physics are real physics, right? So in the tutorial, it tells you to roll dice, just grab the dice and shake your mouse. It's like, oh, that's really cool, until you realize that when you do that, 4 of the dice roll off the table, or the other 3
They do
land on
appear
top
back
of each
on.
other.
Oh yeah, dice can land on top of each other.
And you're like, well, wait a minute. So I find that it's easier just to place the dice in front of me, select them all, and hit the R key, and they
For
roll
random.
in place. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's easy to manage.
Yeah. There is one other really great thing about this that we haven't talked about, which is your ability to save a game.
Oh,
Save
yes.
a game state.
So awesome.
And putting away a game, I mean, we underestimate, like, if we have a huge game night with a very complex game, it's usually me kicking everybody out of my house going, no, that's okay. I don't mind organizing chits for 90 minutes after we play.
We
Right.
try to help, but I think you got a little OCD. Like, don't touch my chits; they don't go in that box.
Yeah. No, I mean, because you have to put it all back out together in the future.
right.
You know what it's
Yeah,
like?
you do.
It's like, I know everybody wants to help, but it's like, just throw it all in a box, and when my wife watches
Right.
Project Runway, I'll organize it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So we played, and I will say that learning a new game obviously depends on the complexity of that game. But last night, Justin and another friend named Dan, we jumped in and loaded up a new game that none of us had ever played before, called Call to Adventure. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, I highly recommend it. It was a really fun game, and you get it on Amazon. You get the real physical box version for about $32 on Amazon. Neat game. And whoever made this version actually had they I don't know if they just scanned the rule book or whatever, but the rule book was in there too. So we just flipped through the like 10 to 12 pages of the rule book real quick, figured out how to play, and played an entire card kind of dice game. It was probably about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Our first time playing
And
it.
we were learning it.
Yeah.
I
But
think
it was
if we
fun.
played it again, we could do it in an hour easily.
Yeah.
And
But
it
it was
was
fun.
totally fun. It was totally fun. And once we learned the mechanics of how to like manipulate the cards and
Yeah.
be able to put them in your draw pile so nobody else could see them,
Yeah.
because you'd snap to your screen, which is kind of awesome.
You got a hand that only
yeah.
you can see.
And once we kind of figured out some of those mechanics, man, we were cooking with gas. Like we were moving really
Oh, yeah.
quickly.
Very cool. So I recommend this. I don't know if it's still on sale or not.
If it's still $20, it's
Even
so worth it.
$20, man.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! Like, and it's worth $20 because of the workshop that's out there with all of the different game mods that you can get for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous.
And I think this is the getting's good. I feel like I just found Napster early in the when it was on
Right.
the upswing. It's like
Yeah.
as soon as the lawyers find out about this workshop, it's gonna get shut down. So let's play the crap out of it now, and don't tell any DCMA people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so Tabletop Simulator has been around for a while. Do you know how long the actual workshop has been open? Has it been open since the beginning?
I don't know.
I don't either.
The interesting
awesome.
thing though is like if I were
check real
Games
quick.
Workshop, I would be highly encouraging this right now.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
all their stores are closed, right? So you're
Yeah.
getting more people and potentially, like, we have a friend in our group that's planning to play some Age of Sigmar with me at the Nova Open. He's never played Age of Sigmar. I'm planning to teach him in Tabletop Simulator.
I
There
think
you
it's
go, yeah.
genius.
2015 is when Tabletop Simulator was first released. I remember when it first came out, and it was pretty rudimentary when it first
Yeah.
came out. It is in a good place now, though.
Basic games like checkers and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
I could see that being a really awesome sales opportunity, especially with those games that like games with expansions. Any game that's got an expansion, if you got to buy more models. First of all, I'm more likely to want to play Age of Sigmar on that because I know that I could put together an army that fits my play style.
Yeah.
I could play it and not have to paint it. And have a pretty decent time and have a $0 outlay. And that is great for Age of Sigmar, and it's great for me. And if I get hooked, well, everybody knows what happens when I get hooked on something. Let's go find the credit card and get it for real.
Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking, just even as a pretty good Age of Sigmar player that's pretty invested, I can try an army that I've never tried before and see if I like it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I like that army. I may end up getting it. You know what I mean? Like,
Let's
I
say
can
you
try
don't like
different
the
combos.
models or you don't want to paint those models. You're like, well, I don't want to invest in that. And now you're like, oh, I do want to invest in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Try some different combos before having to buy the models. And, the idea is that I'm going to buy some models, but I want to try the combos that fit me, right? And those are the models that I'll end up buying. So
yeah,
I think
nobody
that's great.
wants to buy a whole bunch of models and have it be a dud. Like
Yeah.
I have a shelf full of X-wing planes that'll never see that'll never be in my squad. I could always make squads for other people to play and say, well, you could play that one if you want, but I don't want to play it. And I'm looking at, at $15, $20 a model, and that adds up real fast.
Yeah.
The other thing is if there's a new faction that comes out or let's say you wanted to get into a game that has too many factions. Like this is my problem with X-Wing right now. They went from 2 factions to 7. And I don't know if I want to drop $100 to play the Confederacy. But now at least I could try it out.
Yeah.
And see if it's going to be worth it. And maybe if I could start winning in a simulator like this that's fun and 3-dimensional. I know they also have there's another tabletop simulator out there. I can't remember the name of it. It's totally free. What's the name of it?
Is it the Valis one or?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember.
I always forget how to say it, and I have to Google it for like 15 minutes to find it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Man, I feel
Anyways, there's a couple other options.
I'm losing my gamer cred for having that flow out of my brain, but
there's so much to remember in today's world, though. I'm dropping stuff to make room for new stuff.
Yeah, you just forget everything, Jay.
Yeah, everything. Well, I don't know how to say things anymore. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Noir.
I'm looking at this Noir game called. I'm on Amazon looking at Call to Adventure, going, "Wow, the artwork's really great."
Yeah, that actually was pretty sweet. Those cards were awesome.
That is a beautiful game.
Gorgeous.
And what was cool about that game was that you're building a story while playing the game. And so part of the game is winning through victory points and things like that. But my favorite part was at the end, we had this story that we built about how I became this great paragon of light or something like that. And I started out as a sailor and I did these things, and that was my own personal journey based on the choices I had made during the game. So I thought that was pretty sweet. It was a cool game.
Very cool.
Vassal is that other simulator.
Vassal.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, but that one's open source, and it's a little on the kludgy side, for my opinion. That's my opinion.
It is a little kludgy. It's been around for a long time, though.
The people who love it swear by it. You have to go up the learning curve. And let me tell you, Tabletop Simulator had a learning curve way easier to deal with. And yes, I had to drop $10, but I was having fun goofing around in it versus downloading something that was open source and getting frustrated and shelving it.
Oh, yeah. So, $10 if it's still on sale. I hope it is. Maybe it's not, especially by the time this podcast comes out. But even if it's not $20, it's well worth it. It's well worth your time. Maybe you can even find us on there. We'd love to have you game with us. Go check it out, and we'll find some time. So thank you so much for listening to our episode tonight, and happy gaming, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.